The Global Aerospace Summit's NextGen initiative places great value on capacity building and preparing the future workforce. In the following session, you will find out what it takes to attract and retain top talent in the aerospace industry. The discussion will be moderated by Ms. Abir Khater, Advisor to UAE Space Agency DG, Academic Affairs.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today for our session, Attracting and Retaining Top Talent in the Aerospace Industry. My name is Abir Khater, Advisor for Academic Affairs at the UAE Space Agency. We are very delighted to host this session today, which is part of the NextGen initiative of the Global Aerospace Summit. Before we start, I would like to welcome our panelists, four young professional women from different parts of the world who have established themselves in the aerospace industry. We are very lucky to have them here with us today to share their stories, their insights, and answer questions about today's topic. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the panelists to introduce themselves. Let's start with Sophia. Please go ahead.
Hello, Abir. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's just a pleasure to be here. My name is Sophia Porter, and I work at Blue Origin as a BE-4 orbital engine test operations engineer. Originally, I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, where the night skies had the Milky Way every single night, and they inspired me to join the aerospace industry. I also love the industry because it feels like a noble pursuit. It's something that's very easy to justify. It's very collaborative. It's very positive and goal-oriented. And so that was a large part of the reason that I joined. I studied physics and applied mathematics and statistics at Johns Hopkins University, and then I took my first job here at Blue Origin. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sophia. Welcome. Latifa, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Latifa Al-Blushi, and I'm working from Stratas Manufacturing Company. I have a master's in HR, and I'm a certified recruiter. Stratas Manufacturing Company is owned by Mubadala Company and is specialized in producing aircraft parts from composite material.
Thank you, Latifa. Gillian, do you like to go next, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gillian Pierce. Thank you so much for having me in this panel. I'm really excited to chat with all of you. I have a kind of untraditional background that I'm hoping becomes more traditional as this field expands. I'm a lawyer by background, but I'm a space nerd by birth. And I grew up in Florida. And even though I couldn't see the Milky Way in the night sky, I was able to watch rocket launches and shuttle launches growing up. In fact, my very first memory is of going to see a shuttle launch with my dad. And I begged him and I begged my mom, and they sent me to space camp for a week. And I remember just thinking this was the coolest thing ever. I was going to be an astronaut. And then I realized how challenging some of the STEM fields were. And I decided to pursue my passion for communications and ended up doing a degree in liberal arts. So it was communications, public affairs, and political science, which set me on a track for law school. And my very, very last semester of law school, I attended an international law conference and was very inspired by a panel on space law and space policy. Realized there was a way to combine my passion and my skill set. And I have been working in the space industry and space policy specifically since 2014. And right now I am the Director of Federal Government Relations for Space Florida, which is the state of Florida's aerospace authority. So I love telling people I literally get paid to be myself, a space nerd from Florida.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you. Last but not least, Mia. Mia.
Sorry. Good day, everybody. So I am from Cape Town, South Africa. I grew up here, and after finishing high school, had no idea what I wanted to do, but I liked math, so I went to go study engineering. And during my studies, I discovered a passion for physics and optics. So I did a few extra courses and then started my career at a company called Samira, working as an optical engineer. and the company was involved with bespoke telescopes for satellites. We then, in 2018, created a spin-off company from Samira that specialized in the nanosatellites, nanosatellite cameras. So we build small cameras for CubeSats and smaller satellites. And I am the general manager of that company, of that spin-off. I have a great passion for the industry. I've really been enjoying it, and I'm privileged to be representing the African continent on this panel.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mia. Yeah, so we can start our discussion. Of course, our topic today is how to attract top talent and how to keep them in the industry. I would like to start with Gillian, since you're coming from a low background, non-STEM field, as you mentioned, and for many that would seem like, how did you enter this space sector, and with all the STEM? Was it too intimidating? You were not intimidated? What attracted you? What made you join? So if you can give us more, elaborate more on your story and how you ended up joining the sector.
Sure. I think it seems like a lot of us, the passion was sparked early on. We just had to find the right avenue to apply our own talents to the industry. And I think part of what was important for me was seeing other people with my background doing the job. And I think that's something that hopefully we'll talk about a little bit on this panel. It's great to see other young women represented. Coming from a different background, a non-STEM background, I haven't noticed as much the difference that a lot of my colleagues mentioned with their technical backgrounds in terms of the disparity between representation in gender or race or any background. Very fortunate in Washington, D.C. and in the international space policy community. It's quite tight-knit and there is a lot of diversity. But I think I kind of had to make my way and find that one area where I could apply and then wait for that one job. Because what I always tell people, the blessing and the curse of the space industry, especially in the policy community, is that there might be very few jobs because this is currently growing, but the people who are in those jobs stay for a very long time because they do get a lot of fulfillment from this job and they feel very passionate. So for me, it's a lot about networking. And I'd encourage anybody watching the panel, I always love talking to people who are interested in finding a non-traditional avenue into the space sector. And so because we're not in person, I hope you'll share our email addresses, and I'd be more than happy to chat with anybody who's looking at applying a non-traditional background, because like any industry, we need creative types, we need writers, we need editors, we need business people like with an actual savvy head for business, are how a lot of these startups and smaller companies are going to get off the ground and out of the gravity well, if you will. So I think there's a lot of opportunity no matter what your background. If you're interested in space, there's a place for you.
Thank you, Gillian. Gillian, what do you think aerospace companies nowadays, how will they attract top talent and compete with other, lucrative industries? Because it's all about competition, and hunting for the talent is really now very hard to find the talent. And how can we compete with other industries to get the best talent from your point of view?
So at Space Florida, part of what we do is we want to make Florida the place for space. We want to make sure that companies have what they need to be successful in the state. And part of that is workforce development. And so we found to be especially helpful is discussing with the companies what their needs are now and will be in the future, which does present a challenge at times because sometimes there's proprietary information. They might need a secret skill set for some future project that they don't quite want to share. So we get to a point where we kind of have like maybe the 85% of what they're looking for in their next group of labor. And we chat between industry and universities, and also technical degree programs. So maybe not a 4-year college, but a specialized technical training degree where you could do an apprenticeship or something like that. to make sure that the curriculum is geared toward the needs of the workforce. So I think that's one part of it. And then from a recruitment strategy, you know, this industry is really cool. I think we all think it's really cool, but we compete with other technical industries and other business ventures. And so I think, speaking for myself and a lot of my friends and colleagues, and I'm curious to hear from the other panelists, but you know, I think it's important to have a job where, as a young professional, there's upward mobility opportunity. You are able to have impact and ownership over your work and feel like you're contributing to something meaningful. And that's something that I've found for sure in this industry. And I think that's a very important piece of what people in the millennial generation and after us are looking for in a place to work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Moving on to Mia, being a female woman from Africa, working in a very rigorous field. How do you think, Mia, they should attract top talent in Africa, especially women? How do we influence women from Africa to join that sector, or STEM in general?
Yes, so I think, in my personal opinion, the influence, or at least my experience of the influence of women in not only aerospace but in any STEM field, starts with a cultural change. I think starting at home, where you convince your daughters and your sons that the aerospace is not just a field for boys, that it is a field that women can also take part in and be a part of is very important. Growing up, young women growing up thinking that this is a possibility of a job is very important. And that starts with not only teachers and schools telling and making this apparent, but for parents to encourage that cultural change in the homes as well. I think the best way for us to do this, because you know the best way for people to see that this is not just a man's world, is for women to set the example, for women to operate in aerospace and to show these girls that this is not just a man's world. But then you sit with a bit of a chicken and an egg situation, because now you've got, you know, you need women to demonstrate that it's not just a man's world, but where are these women to demonstrate? So those of us that are currently in the industry need to be vocal and step up and show these girls that, you know, we're making a success. We're here, we're making it work. We're just as good as the guys in this industry. And I think that is important all over the world, but I can definitely attest that is very important in Africa. When I grew up, I always thought, and this is, I always thought space was you know, in other countries. It doesn't happen in South Africa, but growing up and realizing that it is in Africa, and I want to show girls that, you know, even though you're in Africa and you're a woman, you can still be in the aerospace industry and take part in it.
Thank you so much, Mia. We'll get back to that in a bit. We move to Sophia. Following on what Mia just said, representing the US, or here also you are in the STEM, coming from a STEM background. What demographics should the aerospace industry focus on recruiting in the coming, you know, phase?
Absolutely. I think that's a question with many answers. And I first want to focus on even why should the aerospace industry be recruiting right now? What's the importance of it to us? And the way one recruiter described it to me, we have what he called a bathtub right now in terms of availability of engineers to work in aerospace. Back in the 50s and 60s, we had these major successes in the space industry, and we had a large number of children growing up saying, I want to do that. I want to be an engineer. I want to be an astronaut. Then we had the beginnings of the internet era, where a lot of people who could potentially have been aerospace engineers went into computer science or other computer-related industries. And so the number of available engineers kind of took a dip. And so what this recruiter explained is that we're just now starting to kind of come up the other side of the bathtub and have more engineers available. So to me, the importance is that we need to be increasing that bathtub wall as fast as we can, right? We need to be, because soon all of these companies are going to start to have folks retiring. There's going to be nobody to fill their shoes. And so as fast as possible, we need to train up young folks to fill those really significant shoes that are left behind. So the next question is, who should we be recruiting, right? The truth is, I think there are some demographics that give you a bigger bang for your buck right now. One of these demographics is underrepresented minorities because they bring a diverse set of perspectives, a diverse background. Another is women, just for the exact same reason that they bring a skill set that the aerospace industry hasn't had historically. And I just sit here and imagine the kinds of progress that we could be making if the aerospace industry was already more diverse and it already had a greater wealth of ideas and thoughts and backgrounds and connections, because it's always been a multinational industry. It's always been a collaborative industry, one where you can't work alone, you have to bring people together. And I think who best to build those connections, who best to bring the world together as much as possible in the pursuit of exploration than women and minorities who've historically been underrepresented. I also think that an easy place to recruit is a critical turning point where some students tend to turn away from becoming engineers. So in particular, this would be middle school. I know this is a little bit, it's hard for an individual company to go to a middle school and expect that they're going to turn out engineers. But if we all collectively start recruiting even younger than high school, even younger than we can give out internships, but we start retaining students who would otherwise potentially slide out of technical careers because they might be challenging or because they might be afraid that they're not going to succeed, this is where I think we can start to turn over a really high number of students into the aerospace industry. What should we do that leads us to collect as many successful students as possible? Well, one, I think, especially when you're talking about people who are traditionally underrepresented, we have to talk candidly about what makes people successful. In my own experience, it's not always engineers who got a 4.0 GPA who are doing the best work. However, it is engineers who care deeply about the work that succeed. And so when you talk to students, when you're informing them, when you're recruiting them, when you're trying to get them to stay, the important things to emphasize are really what's going to make them successful. And in doing so, I think you have to work hard not to scare them away. To me, one of the greatest ways to do this is kind of what our panelists have already talked about, to emphasize the importance of exploration, the value of it, the fun of it, to remind them that it's so much more than a job, that it can really be a significant and meaningful part of your life.
Thank you, Sophia. You basically touched actually about a very important point is reaching out or outreach programs to middle schools, starting early on to deliver a message. So as you said, maybe some students will be intimidated, not really scared to enter these fields or the science or STEM fields. So maybe assurances, maybe going out with role models, speaking more, emphasizing maybe the importance or excite the students about the field is a way to go. And I see from what you're saying that companies should go out and maybe deliver certain messages, starting from middle school. Thank you, Sophia, so much. Interesting enough, where our last on this question is Tifa, who comes from an HR background and works for Strata. Tifa, I believe Strata have a very successful story. You have impressively achieved 61% of emeritization. So we'd like to really hear about the success story of Strata. How did you achieve this percentage, and what are you consider as successful strategies for attracting top talent for this industry in the UAE, in this region for sure?
Yeah, one of the main goals that the leadership of the country built the Strata manufacturing facility in Al Ain city itself is to create job opportunities for the people, for the labor force who are living in Al Ain. Al Ain is known as a conservative city comparing to the rest of the Emirates, and having such an industry which requires the employees to work in manufacturing facility, which they have to be bending for a long time, countersinking, drilling. It was very difficult to convince talents to join such industry. But we had also to talk to parents, convince them to arrange visits. They came to Strata to see the facility. And Strata was successful also by having the university program in collaboration with the United Arab Emirates University, which is one of the highest ranked universities across the country, in which we developed a program to graduate those talents. It consisted of 2 phases of study phase, then on-job training. By that, the awareness has been increased in the community. People came to know more about the aerospace industry. And, you know, it's a word of mouth. Everyone was telling the rest of the people, come and see what Stratas is doing. It's different about the government jobs. And by that, people were passionate, and we were receiving like lots of applicants want to join this industry. Added to that, yeah, we are very proud that we achieved 61% the Emiratization rate, among them which are 88% female workers. And nowadays we have a lot of success stories for women who started as technicians and they grow up to the team leader level and to supervisor and senior supervisor levels.
Thank you so much. Very, very impressive. We have mentioned, I mean, it has been mentioned here about the role of the industry, or trying to align actually the industry with academia to more or less pave the way for those fresh graduates to, when they go to the workforce or the labor market, they are more or less ready or have good insights about the different industries and so on. So Latifa, you had mentioned so, and I think Sophia as well, but if the others would maybe give their feedback on such a topic. Go ahead, Mia.
Yes, thanks, Abir. Yeah, so in South Africa, and I'm sure the rest of Africa, it's not always possible to find the top talent in a traditional sense. The talent in Africa doesn't always come with the correct paperwork that you would expect, you know, from the universities and so on. So to find the top talent, it's very important to find that potential and implement an on-the-job training program to find the people with the potential, with the passion, with the aspiration to make a success in this industry, to make a success in this world, who did not necessarily have the opportunity to, you know, go study at a university where they would come to you with the right paperwork. It lies on the company to find these people, give them the opportunity to recognize their talent, and give them the opportunity and put the work into the on-the-job training to get them to be of value in the industry. And because these people don't have the paperwork, it's not easy to find the talent. And therefore it's important to reach out to students, to schools, and give students that wouldn't, or school children who show potential, who show interest, who show passion, give them that opportunity, go to them and give them the commitment from your side, to give them the training to be able to join the industry.
Thank you so much. Gillian, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that because I completely agree. And I think something that's really inspiring to see is that other places in the world are doing this differently in a really innovative and a very successful way, right? So the way, Mia, you just described, hiring people who don't have, because I'm very passionate about bringing people in who have non-traditional backgrounds as well. I think that's a different way. Sophia mentioned, you know, there are different, many different groups of people we want to bring together. And I think, you know, one of the things is the different interdisciplinary nature of the workforce as we move along. And I think Latifa also mentioned, you know, the UAE is newer in the space field, but having successes so much more rapidly than the US did at the beginning of the space program, because we we didn't bring in a lot of diverse talent, and it also hadn't been done before, right? So now that we're increasing this global talent pool, it's also really important for each of us to learn from each other. And so one of the things that we've been trying to focus on in Florida as well is erasing the stigma or the negative thought around non-traditional, non-four-year degrees. So technical degrees or just specialties in welding or electricity or electricians, right? Things like that are actually very, very important and vital, in fact, to some of the manufacturing and just a talent pool that we had taken for granted, and then realized because these other four-year programs were hyped as the cool thing or the only way into the industry, people kind of slept on, to use a matter of speech, these other ways that could get them in faster, possibly higher paying, and to have just as much impact. And so it's really important when we're talking about recruiting that we look at all avenues, at all ages, at all backgrounds, because I think this panel has proved no matter what your background is, if you have a passion, there is a place for you in this industry, and it's a really great place to be.
Yes, and give room as well for the vocational, as you mentioned, because those people would think they stand no chance, in getting into this industry, for sure. And I like what Mia also had mentioned, that it's sort of an obligation on the industry to really train and have an on-job training or shadowing or so some sort of bridging between the industry and academia is very, very much needed. Sophia, you had your hands raised. Go ahead, please.
I wanted to add to Gillian's point about recruiting people with what we would call non-traditional backgrounds, perhaps people who studied in a different way or who had hands-on experience but don't have the four-year degree. I was speaking with one of my favorite professors about the students who have done the best in his lab. These would tend to be physics students, so they are rather technical and they're being recruited from his university, and so in that sense they are traditional. But what he explained to me is the students who he would tend to recruit would be these excellent straight A students who would kind of give the same level of care to everything. They knew they could kind of just cruise and they would be doing good work. But he found the students who actually excelled the most were the ones for whom the lab was a bit of a reach, who typically wouldn't be recruited, who he had to take a bit of a chance on because they didn't have necessarily the right background or they weren't far enough along in their studies. But he found that they were the ones who cared the most, who were the most thrilled to have the position. To them, it wasn't just another lab position. It was like the highlight of their year, the thing that they were excited to do. So he found that by taking a chance on these students, sometimes he could find the best performers. So I think, there's just one more reason to be looking in non-traditional avenues.
Thank you. We have touched on outreach, but maybe from whoever can share their experience from their companies or from previous experiences, a successful outreach programs that you have launched or you think it has a high impact and reaching out to those who are in middle school or high school. Any certain programs that's implemented? Latifa, please go ahead.
Yeah, so for us, we have the Strata Youth Council and we have Stratas ambassadors. So we go and visit the schools and universities, the vocational schools, where we tell them that aerospace does not mean only to be a pilot. It means that you can do the engineering, electrical engineering, or these related fields. And the ambassadors and the workforce, they explain to them the variety of the employees. Like, for example, we have more than 35 nationalities working with us. These connections, the mixture of the experience and the knowledge, by that they built the understanding of a better understanding of the aerospace industry. And other outreach programs that we use is participating in the educational fairs, the career fairs, to guide the students to pursue their education, for example, toward the STEM-related fields. These kind of things encourage and they change the previous understanding that, the mindset that we should only target this kind of specialization and not this one.
And Latifa, I had mentioned earlier, which I liked a lot, talking to the parents as well, because they could be against their children's will at some point, or say, no, this field, you will not find a job, and what will you do, and so on.
Yes,
and Mia had also mentioned, changing the culture or working on starting from home.
Yes, that's true, because if you see the number of engineering graduates nowadays compared to last year, compared to 10 years ago, we have significant graduates now from the engineering streams. So the mindset has been changed already. It has been part of the development of the universities and aligning, as you mentioned, the academia, what is the industry requirements, and taking this information and then the government will guide the educational and vocational institutes to provide the specialization that are required more in the marketplace. So their children will be having more opportunities for employment.
Thank you, Latifa. Any more comments on that topic? Thanks. There is, of course, we are in the COVID era here, so it's an inevitable question that we all have experienced through the past 6 months. Of course, COVID-19 has accelerated remote working using technology and working from home and so on. It would seem to many that working remotely for this specific industry is much harder, or maybe it didn't work. Maybe I would like to hear whoever had the experience with that, and did it work? How did it work? Was it successful? Is remote working here to stay in post-COVID, or from your point of view? Who would like to? Mia? Okay.
Yes, I'll start with that one. I have been very impressed with the way that the industry has adapted. I mean, we're having this conference remotely and digitally, and I know from my company, we found out on the Sunday that the country was going into lockdown on the Thursday, and we had a couple of days to prepare, for all of us to get remote, and it happened so smoothly and so seamlessly. And I think the digitization of the world has been coming along for a very long time, and COVID has shown us how far we've actually come, and has made it possible for us to work remotely. And our company started embracing it a couple of years ago, and we started employing people from different countries. We've got somebody in Europe that works for our company, and we've got somebody in Russia that works for our company, and they're very, very glad that we're now all on digital platforms, because now we communicate in the same way that they do. So that has made their lives a lot easier. Another thing that I was very impressed with was I watched the Vega launch recently, and they were the integration of the launch vehicle, the satellites into the launch vehicle, was discussed, how they had to use the smart glasses with the satellite owners and the people on the ground in French Guiana, who wore the smart glasses so that the people could see remotely what they were seeing as they were integrating the satellites into the launch vehicle. And that was amazing to me. That, I mean, I've known about these glasses existing, but now we're actually using them, and they're beneficial. And I think that as terrible and as horrific as the pandemic was, it's taught us a lot of capabilities, and we have realized a lot of capabilities in the digital world.
Thank you, Mia. I think UAE has a lot to say about that as well. Latifa, from Stratas experience, remote working, how did it work for you?
Remotely working, it was a subject that we had previously before COVID, but it was always not given that spotlight. So it was just kept aside. But when COVID came and shocked us all, so it was something that, it was really a positive thing that the employees who were placed on remotely working, they were very productive, especially with the as you know, the population that 88% are women, and they have children, and the homeschooling thing. So it helped a lot for this category. So it ensured that they are working from home, doing whatever their job requires, and they are staying with their families and children. The other thing, for those workers who cannot work remotely, who should be in the factory itself, we thought more about the artificial intelligence involving robotics in the shop floor. So in such circumstances that we cannot have all the employees working in the lines, we should have something that will cover and ensure the business continuity.
Excellent, and thank you, Latif. And I believe also our Mars mission was launched during the lockdown. And I think the shipments of the satellite from here to Japan was done during the lockdown. It was very impressive. Gillian, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we've seen a lot of those same trends in the United States and in Florida specifically. I have a unique position where managing federal government relations. Space Florida has a team of about 50 employees, all in Florida except me. For the last 4 years, I've been based in Washington, D.C., but recently relocated back to Florida, and the plan was for me to work in the office with my team to make coordination easier, and then fly back and forth on a weekly basis to DC for meetings. And that hasn't happened, obviously. But what I've noticed is not only has the aerospace industry and my team adapted to these phone calls, and like Mia mentioned, people are kind of working from home the way I have for the last 4 years. So I'm being more in the loop with my own team. But the United States Congress is now working remote. And that took some time to get as well. But I mean, so many of our programs that either are government programs or that are supported by private industry and academia are approved and funded through the Congress. And in addition, the paycheck protection programs for specific industries, including aerospace, all needed to pass through the Congress. And so being able to work remotely and have those meetings remotely has been a revolutionary change for me as well, and for our country. And then I think finally, there are some people like Latifa mentioned who have to be in the factory. It's just, who have to be hands-on because that's what they do. And I've been very impressed with the protection and distancing measures taken by these companies. One of the things at the outset of this, because of course we're still very much in a pandemic, especially in the US, especially in Florida, it is what it is. And so finding ways to adapt to that and still keep everyone safe. So during the actual original lockdown where there were literally police on the roads telling people like, no, you can't come through the gate at the Kennedy Space Center. No, you can't come to this facility. We had to work with our local governments to make sure that there were exemptions for these types of workers, and that these workers knew what badges and identification and letters they needed to show in order to physically be present on these work sites. And so the government has been very much involved in this as well. I think we'll continue to be, and hopefully we see a better trend. Gotta commend the UAE. It looks like you've been able to open things again, and so looking forward to getting to that point in the States as well. But I think, as we've all touched on, there's a silver lining to this, and especially for our generation, being able to work remotely, people who have kids. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of this.
I think it's something that we should continue adopting for for the future, something that we can make use of. Thank you. We can move to a question that comes to mind, like about the young generations. You're young, you're leaders in a way, young leaders. What does it really motivate you? What keeps you going, and what will keep you going, and what will keep you staying in this industry, or growing in this industry in a way. I think I can fairly say that this generation is different than my generation. And so we'd like to hear from you about what does it really take to motivate this generation. Who would like to start? Sophia, go ahead.
I think so. I'm 23 now, so I'm kind of bridging the gap between those who are working and those who are potentially still in school or have just graduated. What motivates me, it's really not the money. If you Google the salaries of the aerospace industry versus other industries, you find that they're close, but you can make more in other industries. But to me, you can't find the same meaning in other industries. You can't have the same sense of international collaboration, of exploration on behalf of community, of the global community, but also on behalf of humanity, right? It's so easy to justify working in this industry. It's so easy to feel good about it. And it's so easy to take ownership of it, in particular because young people are being promoted very quickly for the same reason we talked about earlier, that we need to recruit so hard, that we're running out of leadership who has a great deal of experience, and that we really need to bring up this young generation. So you receive a lot of responsibility. It tends to be very rewarding no matter what you're working on. You know that you're working towards something that matters and that people care about, no matter who they are or where they live. I think also something that's terrific and that's kind of new is that we are starting to have representation. I look around, well, we're not in a room, but I look around our Zoom call and I see these incredible women who are finding success in a diversity of areas around the aerospace industry. And I hope that young women in college and in high school and even in elementary school, right, can look at this room and say, that could be me. I know that the pioneers who paved the way for me to be here weren't able to look at a room and see people who looked like themselves. And it may sound very minor, but I think being able to picture yourself succeeding is such an important part of finding success and meaning, that when you aren't able to look at somebody who's like you succeeding, you don't even sometimes ask the question, could I be successful? You just assume it's not for you. And so to look around now and see people who look like me, and I hope that other women and other minorities can look around and see people who look like them, who are finding success, that they will also find meaning and they will also see themselves succeeding.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you very much. Anyone else that would like to touch on that, from a personal perspective, at least? Go ahead, Mia.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, there's a lot of meaning to be gained from this industry. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, when I was growing up, the space industry was, NASA and ESA, the big countries participating in the industry, and I never imagined that myself being a young girl in Cape Town would be able to participate in something as global as the space industry, being in the most southern point of Africa. But here I am today sitting on this panel and being part of the industry. And I think my inspiration and what retains me in this industry is the fact that I can now give other people the opportunities to, grow in this industry. I can show to other people that it is possible, no matter where you are in the world, and that I can give people that opportunity, and that is an amazing feeling. And also being part of the global community. We spoke earlier about how great it is to be able to work remotely and having the opportunity to, I'm in South Africa, but I could potentially work for a company in America or in Europe or in the UAE or in India or China, because we've got this digitization and because this is such a global community and such a global industry, it just makes the opportunities endless.
Thank you, Mia. Latifa, would you like to say something regarding how Strata have successful retention rates and how they kept their talents?
Yeah. So in each area, I believe that the experience and the knowledge the one gained, it doesn't end of the borders. For example, I'm working in the HR, but my learning curve doesn't end only in the HR. I'm learning about also manufacturing processes, about engineering, supply chain. So this mixture of the experience and the knowledge that I gain is a driver for me to stay in the aerospace industry. And what we have done to retain those talents in Strata is providing the training given to us with our customers like Boeing and Airbus, or in-house trainings. We have also the community engagements. We have those young talents, they would like to go and speak to the audiences and join as speakers in the events. So these kinds of things, they motivate the employees to stay. In addition, since we have a large population of the women, we have introduced something like the part-time employment. So these employees can have work and life balance. They can fulfill their work goals in addition to their families, look after their families, and so on. These were very successful things that we did to retain our employees.
Thank you so much, Latifa. Thank you so much, everyone, for your inputs. I think we can wrap up. We addressed two very important topics, areas, how to attract the top talent and how to keep them in the industry. I think what we can take from here that the top talent, we need to reach out to those young students early on. From middle school or even earlier, starting from home, changing the culture, aligning the industry with the academia, with the schools, and going out there and showing real faces and real models to speak to the students and put a face to the story. I mean, not just on paper that you can join an industry, and also reach out and go to different backgrounds, like starting from vocational, not just the pure engineering or technical fields, but also to other fields. As Gillian mentioned, business is very much needed. Economics, law, of course, is every field is very much needed in this sector. The second part of our discussion was about retention and what motivates this young generation to stay. And I like so much what you have all mentioned is the impact. Showing what kind of impact that you can have, to have an ownership, to give those new talent, top talents, ownership of the projects they're working on or whatever they're working on. They feel they have an ownership. They feel they have an impact, and so they can, as Sophia said, working towards a cause for humanity. Not just for salary, because you can find a salary in different industries, obviously, and it's not just about the salary. And also mobility, ability that you will be in the future able to move your way upwards and progress in the field. Diversity is very, very much needed. The gap, Sophia mentioned the gap right now, because people went into computer science and IT. So there is a huge gap. We need to fill the gap. However, we need to fill it with more diverse faces, like what we have seen here today. That's all. Would you like to share anything else at the end? Anyone? Thank you.
It's a real pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity.
I really would like to thank everyone on the panel so much. Thank you, Sophia, Gillian, Mia, and Latifa. And I would like to thank the organizers of the event as well. For everyone else that joined us today, thank you so much for your time to attend the session. I hope you found it useful. Thank you, everyone, and take good care. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.